This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses.
It's too bright to do a video right now, isn't it? Jesus. Thinking was at the start of the video, Lenny suggested, like, why don't you let the dogs pick the delay pedal and drive pedal that you use. So you saw that Norma touched the Dude pedal first and Fenton touched the LVX first, so that's why I'm using those in the intro. So it's been quite a while that it's over a year now that I've been in this stage of trying to be sensible about kind of what pieces of gear I hang on to. So obviously, you know, on the channel that I'm interested in trying a lot of different stuff. That's part of what keeps this channel kind of interesting for me and helps to bring some inspiration. Whether it's kind of like new delay pedals, drive pedals, the things that I guess we're all interested in as guitarists and guitars even. And also it helps people discover the channel because they might think, right, I want to see a demo of a Meris LVX or an HX Stomp video, and I happen to show up in their searches. So that's kind of the reason for demoing gear and all that sort of stuff. But what it can lead to, and if you're thinking of starting a YouTube channel, is you have this kind of ongoing kind of gear churn, I kind of call it, where you're like buying pieces of gear. And the idea with this presumably would be that you would then also move on pieces of gear as well. So you'd have like a natural kind of things coming in, things coming out. Maybe bits would stay, other bits would go. If you're lucky enough to work with certain companies, then there might be bits that you get loaned, or there might be bits that they give you a deal on and all that sort of stuff. But essentially what I'm talking about is you're going to end up with sometimes having some things where you might need to sell some stuff. Now for me, that's okay. I have this room that I can put the stuff in. I'm in another one of these feelings where it's like, I had like a bit of a sell-off. So I've sold one amp already this week. And I'm thinking, right, it's time to really pare back the amount of amps that I've got. Now, if you're at all familiar with the channel, you'll know for sure that I'm a modeling guy, essentially, right? Although I've got these really pretty things behind me, they get turned on very occasionally, just like my wife. I don't know if I should probably cut that out. Sorry, Lenny. And the modeling gear is where it's kind of at for me, because for two reasons really. One, I really enjoy kind of exploring new bits and pieces. It's all there in front of you. And two, then you can get the presets if you find tones that you like in some of the videos that I do. So it kind of works quite nicely for me and hopefully for you, that those presets generally I try to keep the price so pretty much anyone could afford them, and yeah, the cheapest presets on the internet or something. I should probably get a t-shirt with that on it, not going to do that. But anyway, the amp thing, and you saw last week, for instance, I borrowed that amp off Jake, the number one Pro Reverb made in 1965. These things, they're really awesome, but what I find is that each amp that you add to the collection doesn't really add as much as what you were thinking it might do when you were in the throes of gas, if that makes sense. So what I've got here, for instance, this is an Electrodyne, a Mesa Boogie Electrodyne. This is a 45/90 watt, essentially a clean amp with two drive channels, the low and the high, and a spring reverb and an effects loop. The Mesa Boogie Lone Star is a 2-channel amp. Essentially, you've got a clean, and you can clone the second channel with another clean or some really nice drive stuff, and it's got a spring reverb and an effects loop. The Mesa Boogie Mark III that I've got is essentially a 3-channel amp, and it's got a clean channel, a drive channel, and an effects loop. They're all as well pretty much Mesa Boogies, and they all sound pretty much within whatever percentage of each other. They have similar amounts of gain, except the Electrodyne has less, and a similar kind of gain structure. They're all 6L6 amps. So at the end of the day, why on earth do I have 3 of these things here? I had my first amp that I ever bought as well, the Mesa Boogie Nomad 45, which I think I'm keeping, as well as maybe the Mark III, because that's quite a cool little hardwood cabinet thing. The issue that I also have with some of these amps is like the Mark III weighs 32 kilograms, and for me, gigging with that is just too heavy to really justify, and especially when, for the gigs that I do, I generally have to take the PA system, so I don't have space in the car for these anyway. And on top of that, you also then have to figure out a way to get that sound to the front of house, so I'd have to take a microphone or get a load box or something. Or what I could do is what I've been doing now for years, where I just take a modeler, take a small little Henriksen Bud, or take the Nomad and go into the amp and also to the front of house in like a hybrid sort of modeling setup. That seems to work for me really well. And well enough that I think, why don't I sort of start with a bit of a blank slate? So that was kind of my idea with this. Like, if you are in a situation where you've got a lot of amps, maybe you think about, right, do I want all of these things? And maybe it's the same with all of the gear stuff. So if you say, right, I've got all of these drive pedals, and I was thinking, like, mentality wise, if I sold all of these today, I'm pretty sure I'd only buy back one of these, right? This was kind of the way that I tried to talk myself into this thing. So the sentimental attachment to each of these is there. So the Lone Star, I know I could go and get another Lone Star, so that one's okay. And I prefer to have like a shorter head format for it. So that one's fine. The Electrodyne is a unique looking amp, you know, this is a custom order or whatever. And if I wanted to find another Electrodyne head, those are a little bit rare. However, the drive on this amp is not as versatile as the Lone Star. The Mark III, I could easily get a Mark III most days of the week, I think. They're quite easy to come by. If not, a Mark IV. It might be a bit more difficult to get one that looks as cool as that one. However, it would probably be months before I'd actually even want to get a new one. And if I did buy one, would it be any of those 3? I don't know. So that's kind of my mentality with thinking about this, is like, if I can sell some of them or any of them and then sort of start afresh without the sentimental attitude, like, what would I actually get? Would I buy a Lone Star, an Electrodyne and a Mark III again? Almost certainly not. And I've got a friend, Jake, who's just gone to pick up a Fender Vibroverb, and he's also in a situation where he's got quite a lot of amps at the moment, and he's in the same scenario where he's thinking, well, like, there's 3 amps here that I don't particularly need, or necessarily, well, definitely don't need, but possibly don't even want, and it can become a thing where they might be difficult to sell as well. So that's my mentality with this. That's why I think I'm going to try and sell a fair chunk of these amps and then sort of start fresh. And then, you know, if I saw a 1970s Fender Pro Reverb come up, I could be thinking like, all right, I've only got 1 or 2 amps at home. I can realistically bring one into the house to demo and buy one and that. At the moment, I feel like sort of bases are loaded as it is, and I don't want to bring more into the house. So that was my thinking with this. If I sold all of these and started afresh, would I buy them again? And I think the chances are 3 of those amps I could replace with just one, if that makes sense. So maybe if I try and sell 2 of them, then I'd end up in a scenario where I've just got kind of the 2 amps and maybe even one. If I could be a 1 amp guy, I think I'd be quite happy with that. Like, I think it's nice to keep a Valve amp and maybe have, like, you know, a few that come in for the channel, like for a bit, like the Rockaverb did, or the Cornford Carrera. Be able to experiment with different amps, but you know, I'm never gonna replace my kind of modeling approach at this point. It's too easy and too like there's much more sharing that I can do with it. So yeah, that was that. That's why I think I'm selling my amps. They're a bit heavy for me, some of them. Also, I don't use them because, as you know, I'm into this modeling thing. And then I'm thinking I could probably get by with much fewer amps. So I was thinking if I sold them all at the same time, or tried to, then maybe I could replace the whole lot with just one that does the job. Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments if you want.